You know, that feeling, that not in your stomach, maybe, or just seeing all the frustration online, maybe feeling it yourself, it's kind of hard to ignore these days. So our deep dive today is really getting into that sense of unease.
Yeah.
We're looking at this piece from Pathos. It's called Are We Really Worthy? Rotten Economics and Politics, just published today, May 9th, 2025.
And it starts strong, doesn't it? Painting this picture of a world on fire with rage against everything.
Exactly. And the article basically argues that, underneath it all, there's this struggle with money and maybe a breakdown in how we understand things.
It's a feeling I think a lot of people can connect with, the sense that the way things are set up, it's not quite right.
Right.
That the systems, our economic systems, political ones, they could be working better for more people.
Yeah.
So what we want to do here in this deep dive is really pull apart the main arguments in the article. Get to the roots of this feeling of unease.
Specifically looking at the economics and the politics of it all. And look, if you're like me and you want to actually understand these, huge, complicated issues without falling down some endless rabbit hole online or getting bogged down in jargon.
Yeah, trying to cut through the noise.
Exactly. Then, hopefully this is the place for you today. We're going to pull out the key stuff, maybe find some angles you hadn't thought about.
And leave you feeling a bit more clued in, maybe a bit more empowered, even.
So, the big questions the article asks, the ones we're going to chew on, are basically, are we humans just, inherently flawed?
Is our economic system actually serving most people?
And our politics, is the way we talk about things helping us, or is it just, holding us back?
Big questions.
Huge. Okay, let's jump in.
So the article starts with something really fundamental. What we believe about ourselves, about humanity. It points out that, it seems like a lot of people have a pretty negative take, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, we're inherently bad, maybe even, doomed by some higher power.
Right, this idea that we're just fundamentally broken from the get-go, it feels kind of ingrained sometimes.
Yeah. But the article pushes back on that almost immediately, which I found pretty refreshing.
Me too.
It argues that, okay, yeah, we've got problems, lots of them. But if you step back and look at the big picture, the world's actually better in many ways than it's ever been.
That's a point it makes quite strongly.
And crucially, it emphasizes that we do have the capacity to make things better. We can make positive changes.
And it links this idea, our potential for good, to spiritual teachings. It specifically summarizes some of Jesus's teachings about money.
And the key insight there, I think, is the distinction it draws. It's not saying money itself is evil.
No.
But the love of it, valuing money over other people, that's where the trouble starts, according to the article.
That really jumped out at me, too. It brings up verses like, you cannot serve two masters from Matthew. That really spells out the conflict, right? Prioritizing wealth versus, say, spiritual values.
And that image, the camel in the eye of the needle in Matthew 19, it really drives home the potential dangers of having too much wealth, how it can maybe get in the way.
It also talks about wealth being temporary, something you don't take with you.
Right. So the implication is use it responsibly. Share it. Don't just hoard it.
And the bit about being good stewards of talents in Matthew 25, it's not just about sitting on what you have, but actively using and growing things for others, not just yourself.
Exactly. Which leads into the article's take on sin and worthiness. It kind of challenges that old idea that we're just automatically sinful and deserving punishment.
Right. Instead, it proposes something more active, like acknowledging when we mess up, when we cause harm.
And then actually trying to do better. That's presented as the path to forgiveness.
This idea of the unforgivable sin was interesting, too. Not some specific act, but just stubbornly refusing to change when you know you're causing harm.
Yeah, it shifts the focus, doesn't it? From some kind of fixed state of being bad to a conscious choice to keep doing harmful things.
Exactly. So it's about taking responsibility, trying to mend fences with people you've hurt, seeking forgiveness from them, maybe spiritually too.
And that, the article argues, is what brings a sense of, spiritual worthiness.
Okay, so shifting from that sort of individual spiritual level to the bigger systems we've built, the article gets pretty critical about our current economic setup.
It does. It acknowledges, capitalism has upsides, competition, innovation, things that have raised living standards for a lot of people.
Oh, definitely. But it pivots pretty fast to the downsides, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. feeling held hostage to money, as it puts it.
Yeah.
And the fact that many people are deprived or ruined by it for no good reason, that's a strong statement.
It is. And mentioning the commanding heights is a good reminder that this whole debate, the pros and cons of different economic systems, it's not new.
Not at all. It's been going on for ages.
And the example it uses, the rural hospital closures, that really makes the point concrete.
It does. Here you have something essential, right? Healthcare.
Totally essential.
And it gets shut down just because it's not making enough profit under this specific model.
And the article says, well, look at schools too, look at infrastructure. It makes you question the real cost when profit is always the bottom line.
And here's something that might surprise some people listening.
Yeah.
The article argues that big corporations are often net job destroyers.
Right. That feels counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It does. It claims the real job growth, the economic energy, comes from small entrepreneurial companies through their hiring, their sales.
Which then makes you look sideways at all the government support, tax breaks, incentives going to those huge corporations.
Exactly. If they aren't the main job creators the article claims they aren't, then who is benefiting most? The article points a finger at investor greed.
And it makes this really important point. Capitalism isn't just like a natural force, it's a system we designed.
We regulate it.
Yeah, but the article argues those regulations often end up favoring business success over, say, protecting consumers.
Right. It paints this picture of a system that can really drive wealth inequality. It talks about rent.
Okay, explain rent in this context.
So think of it like income you get just from owning something, not necessarily from producing something new. Like interest on loans is a big one.
Gotcha. So over time, those interest payments pile up.
Exactly. And that can shift wealth from people who borrow to people who lend, potentially making inequality worse. The stock market's role is also critiqued here.
And a key point it makes about the stock market and wealth is that very wealthy people often reinvest their earnings instead of spending it broadly in the economy, which can sort of pull that money out of active circulation.
Right, which brings us squarely to the stock market itself.
Yeah.
The article lays out, 5 distinct roles, and it leaves with the negative ones.
Yeah, it does. The first one is pretty stark. Its primary role is to crash the economy, causing major suffering. That's provocative.
Very. It cites things like the dot-com crash, the Great Recession, even the economic shocks from COVID as examples of this potential instability driven by the market.
Okay, and the second negative role?
Pushing companies to make decisions that might look good for investors short term.
But can be damaging long term, like mergers that kill jobs.
Exactly. Or cutting staff deeply, skimping on R&D or training, or just jacking up prices because they can.
Again, it makes you ask, whose interests are really being served here?
And the third negative role is maybe the most obvious one. It's a wealth-creating machine for investors.
Right, which contributes to that growing gap we talked about. Investors getting richer while others maybe aren't seeing the same benefits.
And then it contrasts these with the more positive roles. Funding retirement accounts is one.
Okay, that's important for many people.
And the article says, somewhat hesitantly, helping fund startups, though it notes banks are often reluctant to fund really new ventures.
Right, so the stock market can sometimes fill that gap.
Sometimes. But the article's overall thrust is toward a big shift. It wants to see the stock market's role diminished.
And move towards something it calls participatory capitalism. Can you unpack that for us?
Sure. As the article explains it, participatory capitalism means spreading economic power and benefits more widely. Think employee ownership, more people having a say in economic decisions.
So less concentrated power and wealth.
That's the idea, making it more, participatory.
Okay. And then it touches briefly on some really big economic topics, the national debt, the balance of trade.
Yeah, and it pushes back against the panic narratives you often hear.
How so?
It suggests the national debt isn't necessarily the catastrophe it's made out to be, partly because it's mostly financed by investors buying bonds. And it introduces this idea of the U.S. economy being expansive.
Expansive, meaning not like a fixed pie where if one person gets more, another has to get less.
Exactly. It talks about money multipliers in the banking system.
Okay, what's that?
Basically, when you deposit money, the bank lends most of it out. That borrower spends it, the receiver deposits it, their bank lends it out, and so on. The initial deposit gets multiplied through the system.
Ah, okay. So money isn't just static.
Right. And consumer spending also acts as a multiplier. So the focus, according to the article, shouldn't just be on dividing up what exists, but on how wealth is generated and flows through the whole economy.
So ultimately, the article is calling for a major rethink.
A fundamental one, yeah. Reevaluating the main goals of business and the stock market, shifting towards prioritizing community and individual well-being.
Instead of just seeing those as like side effects of chasing profit.
Precisely. It really asks, what would an economy truly designed around people actually look like?
Which leads nicely into this whole dog-eat-dog mentality section. The article talks about how pervasive that idea is, that life is just this brutal competition.
And how that view can really shape perception.
Yeah.
Right. Making the world seem harsher than it maybe needs to be.
Oh, yeah. And even leading people to justify, acting unethically because that's just how the game is played.
It argues this erodes trust, fuels stress and cynicism.
And pushes us towards individualism instead of cooperation, which the article clearly thinks is damaging. It mentions AI summarizing these effects, referencing survival of the best fitted.
Right, the idea that only the most ruthless or adaptable survive in this opposed environment.
But the article calls this whole dog-eat-dog thing a destructive myth.
Yeah, a lie, basically. This idea that the pie is fixed, that one person's gain must be another's loss.
It argues the opposite, that boosting spending for lower-income folks can actually grow the whole pie, benefiting everyone.
And it proposes a concrete solution here. Taxing stock market trades.
Okay, tell us about that.
It suggests even a tiny tax, like a fraction of a percent, on each transaction could generate massive revenue. Enough, potentially, to pay off the national debt in maybe a decade.
Wow. And a slightly bigger tax?
Could make a huge dent in funding healthcare, it argues.
It also mentions other, maybe smaller changes, like strengthening health insurance.
And retirement options for regular working people. And curbing what it calls rent-seeking, which is essentially making excessive profits from just owning assets or manipulating the system, rather than actually creating new value or producing goods and services.
Got it. So moving from economics to politics, the article seems pretty skeptical there too.
You could say that. The author seems frustrated with the constant political talk about just making the country richer and richer.
Especially when the U.S. is already incredibly wealthy, right?
Exactly. The article asks, why keep focusing on piling up more wealth at the very top when so many basic needs aren't being met for lots of people?
It really questions the logic of systems that keep enriching the wealthy, potentially at the expense of those who need help the most. What's the end goal?
It also takes aim at some common political arguments about trade. It argues against tariffs.
Why?
It promotes fair trade instead, and argues that helping other countries get wealthier is actually good for us.
Because they become bigger markets for our stuff.
That's the logic. A rising tide lifts all boats, essentially.
And it mentions that many economists don't see trade deficits as automatically bad either.
Right. It references groups like Cato, the World Economic Forum, the Council on Foreign Relations, suggesting deficits can sometimes mean healthy foreign investment is flowing in.
Interesting. What about the national debt again, from the political angle?
Similarly, it brings in economists' views that focus more on the debt-to-GDP ratio being stable rather than the absolute number.
Okay.
And the idea that government borrowing can be beneficial if it's used for investments, infrastructure, education that boost future growth. It even gives a nod to modern monetary theory.
MMT, yeah. Which very basically suggests governments that control their own currency have more flexibility than households, right?
In a nutshell, yes.
Yeah.
But underlying all this economic discussion
is a strong sense of skepticism about politicians really understanding or using economics properly.
Definitely. The article implies economics often gets twisted into a political tool,
Sure.
used to win votes rather than genuinely improve well-being for the majority.
So bringing all these threads together now for the conclusion, the article circles back to that opening question, are we worthy?
In light of these economic systems, the political discourse, the potential for callousness bred by that dog-eat-dog view, it asks us to reflect.
It connects the dots, doesn't it? Between the damaging beliefs we might buy into,
Like the world being inherently cutthroat.
and the real harm that causes others, which, it suggests, could impact our own sense of spiritual worthiness.
But it doesn't just leave us there feeling hopeless. That's important.
No, it really emphasizes that we can change these things. We have the power, collectively.
It shares those quotes, with hate, we have more to lose than gain break the cycle.
And our answer is God. God's answer is us. Together we make the world better. Powerful stuff.
Then it introduces these concepts, probability space and potential space.
Okay, what's probability space?
The article defines it as a situation where basically All the ingredients for something positive to happen are already there. It just needs intention, action, a little push to make it real.
Like the potential for change is already present, we just need to activate it.
That seems to be the idea. And it links this to efforts like Democracy 2.0 and Capitalism 2.0.
Movements trying to update and include more people in these systems.
Exactly. It encourages you, the listener, to look into these ideas, maybe explore the author's own proposals, like that stock market tax.
It mentions a book, Democracy 2.0, and the Council for Inclusive Capitalism as places to start.
It also points to the author's other work, a book called Unleash Movements That Matter, and a course on working with new generations as further resources for anyone wanting to, dig into how to actually make change happen.
So, wrapping up this deep dive, the core message from this article really feels like a challenge, doesn't it?
It really does. A challenge to you listening to look critically at the economic and political stories we're told.
And to think hard about how they affect our sense of worth and how they affect everyone's well-being. So on that note, maybe a final thought for you to chew on, building on that probability space idea.
Yeah.
What's one small thing, maybe one deliberate action you could take, inspired by some of this, to help open up a probability space for a world that feels a bit more just, a bit more equitable?
That's a good question to leave people with.
Maybe it's checking out some of those resources we mentioned, or just starting a conversation about what Democracy 2.0 or Capitalism 2.0 might actually mean in practice.
Yeah, something to reflect on.
Feeling overwhelmed by the state of the world? Ever wonder why some ideas catch fire and others fizzle out? Dying to change the world? From climate action to social justice, this book empowers you to make a difference alongside your peers. This is your toolkit for building movements and achieving real-world impact. Dive deep into the psychology of influence. Learn how to shift attitudes, overcome resistance, and use the power of momentum to drive your vision forward. Discover how to connect with others and build inclusive communities. Learn how to break down complex issues and leverage the power of social media to make change happen. You're our strongest generation yet. Your generation has the power. This book shows you how to understand change and use your power. Order it now from online retailers and links on Dorian's author website. Please enjoy one of Dorian's songs and see his other books.
Entertain us, the leader yelled. The jester called to his side. The fools we employed, give me a line on how they died. And tell it to us gloriously true. The money we shrewdly drained, our money now invested, how wisely we have gained. I'm the winner of all. To myself I assert, let the truth show plainly, it was worth all those I heard. Let us each know sincerely, my comrades and I, how privileged we are, having the largest piece of the pie. Tell us a tale, a poem, a song. I'll hear no shyness or coyness for all creation to hear, extolling our extreme highness. I'm the winner of all. To myself I assert, let the truth show plainly, it was worth all those I heard. The jester thought a moment, then began with a prayer. Oh God, who am I to lay the truth bare? High on your money, high on power and fame, high on privilege, it's all just a game. I'm the winner of all. To myself I assert, the soldier's widow's tear, and the poor with total loss, thousands of lives lived in fear. Who am I to know how terrible words tug at tender heartstrings when what is needed is a hug? I'm the winner of all. To myself I assert, let the truth